And I mean, I'm just so excited. And there's
You were doing good. Why don't you keep going?
I know what you're going to say.
Hey y'all, welcome back. Tyler and I are out here working this morning while we have a few hours while Cal is napping. The boys are at school. We are getting ready for girls' night out on the farm coming up on Saturday. Yeah, take that too. We're cleaning up, just kind of tidying things up a little bit. I'm out here weeding the flower beds out here in this front outdoor garden. I'm going to talk to you about that here in just a little bit. I kind of wanted to show you what we had going in the flower beds out here. Some things are looking awesome and some things are looking not so great because I'm not a flower farmer. As of now, the weather forecast is calling for thunderstorms on Saturday. Hopefully, we are praying and hoping that we get no rain, no thunderstorms on Saturday, and we can move forward with our girls' night out on the farm. We do have a backup plan if we do get rain. Obviously, we're not going to be outdoors, so I do have a backup venue, but obviously we don't want to use that. We want to be able to bring everybody out to the farm and enjoy the farm and all the hard work that we've been putting into this. But while I'm working through these beds, getting the weed situation taken care of, I kind of wanted to walk you through it and tell you what I'm doing to kind of control the weed population in these beds, and then just kind of give you a walkthrough of the flowers we got going. I was going to talk to you about what I'm doing to help kind of battle the weed situation we have in our outdoor garden. This area has been our garden area for, like 5 years now. It started as raised beds, and then last year we actually tore it down and turned it into an in-ground garden space. And ever since we have done that, we have been battling the weeds. One of my goals this year was to be just a little more consistent about staying on top of the weeds. And let me be honest and tell you, I have not done that great of a job so far. So we do have quite a few weeds out here. It is better than it was last year, and it will continue to get better. But, you know, it's one of those things, the more work you put into weeding and cultivating, the better your weed situation is going to be, and the quicker that you will start to see resolution in your weed pressure. So now that we have guests arriving to the farm this weekend, I do feel quite a bit of pressure to get the weed situation under control. So that's what I'm doing today, is working on that. Thank goodness it has not been too big of an issue, but I did want to talk to you a little bit about the difference in actually weeding versus cultivating. So one of the books that I reference a lot ever since I got into market gardening and market farming is Elliot Coleman's book, The New Organic Grower. It's got all sorts of information in there if you were looking to get into market gardening or just wanting to be a better home gardener. Honestly, I would definitely recommend that book. He covers everything, weeds being one of those things. There is a difference in weeding versus cultivation. You'll hear the term cultivation a lot when it comes to market gardening and gardening in general, and for the longest time I didn't know what that meant. What the heck is cultivation? So really all cultivation is the process of like disturbing the ground or stirring the soil in order to disturb the weed seeds and the small roots, the small weed roots that are starting to develop in the soil. And basically the idea of this is to do it on a consistent basis. Okay, so I don't know, maybe once a week or so. I think it really just depends on your schedule, your time available to do it, and your weed pressure really. But doing it on a consistent basis and doing it before you ever even see the weeds. So a lot of times, you know, you go out into your garden, it looks weed free, it looks so beautiful, and you think, oh, you're on top of the weed situation and there's no work to be done. But really, that's the perfect time to start cultivating your ground. And so one of the tools that I really like to use, and this is one of the ones that Elliot Coleman recommends, is this stirrup hoe. It's dirty. I've been using it this morning. And this is just a really good, affordable, I paid like $25 for this. affordable tool that you can use to cultivate your ground. So basically you take this sucker, you use it in a back and forth motion. I'll take you out there in a minute and I'll show you. Use it in a back and forth motion to just disturb your soil just a little bit. Not enough to really mess up the microbiology that you have going in your soil, but just enough to really disturb those weeds that are going to be emerging soon. And if you don't disturb your soil, they will emerge soon, and before you know it, you'll have a huge weed problem. And I will take you out into my garden and I will show you that, because I have not been cultivating on a consistent basis and I do have a weed issue right now. But yeah, that's all cultivation is. So that's where weeding, in my book, weeding is a little different from cultivating, because when you think about weeding, you're actually going out into your garden, you're seeing this abundance of weeds, this weed pressure, and you're actually on your hands and knees and you're pulling out weeds and you're trying to get them out by the roots. And that is a really strenuous, kind of just painstaking process. It hurts your back, it hurts your knees, and it's just not fun. Whereas if you'll get into the habit of cultivating, and I'm talking to myself here because this is something I've got to get better about. If you will get into the habit of cultivating with a tool like this stirrup hoe, it's so simple, it's so quick, and there's really not a lot of pain involved, whereas my back gets to hurting when I get to weeding a lot. So I'm going to take you out there. I'm going to show you the weed pressure that I have going right now. And even though I do have a pretty significant weed pressure, I'm still going to be using this to weed my garden. So this thing has pretty sharp edges on either side. It's got kind of like this oscillating head on it, so it moves a little bit. And what it will do is it will basically cut those weeds off at the surface of the soil, or maybe just below the surface of the soil. And likely those weeds will attempt to come back. But if I'll stay on top of cultivating, I will eventually disturb those roots enough over time that it will kill out those weeds. This is a small patch of coral fountain amaranth. This is my first time growing it, and as you can see, I have some very significant flea beetle damage on these leaves. And I mean, the flea beetles have just been like decimating these guys. So what I've done is, same thing I did in my tunnel for my tomato plants, is I took some spinosad spray and I sprayed these guys down. And my understanding is spinosad is just like a natural microbe found in the soil, and it will kill the flea beetles. So that's what I did, and I do think it has worked some. I'm still seeing flea beetles, but I do think it's working some, because I'm seeing the new growth here. These new leaves, they don't look quite as damaged as these older leaves here. So you can check this guy out. He doesn't look quite as damaged, but I will probably do another application of that, because I do see a few flea beetles here and there, but definitely not the pressure that I was seeing before I sprayed. And you can see the weed pressure in between these rows of amaranth here. I've got quite a bit of this pigweed here, and then this other stuff, honestly, I don't even really know what it is. But had I been cultivating on a regular, consistent basis, I really wouldn't have this sort of pressure. But I'm gonna go ahead and show you how I use this stirrup hoe, and we're gonna start to take care of this problem. Okay, I'm gonna try to do this one-handed. We'll see how it goes. But basically all you do, I mean, it almost seems silly to be showing you this because it's so simple, but you take your stirrup hoe and you literally just use the weight of the hoe. So you're not digging down into it, so it's really not a strenuous process. And you just use your back and forth, you just use a back and forth motion to just disturb the soil a little bit. And it starts to cut these weeds off. Some of them it will rip up, but some of them it will cut off at the surface, so they will regrow. But like I said, consistent use is just going to continue to disturb the weed seeds and the roots more and more until they eventually die out. So I think a couple of important thoughts or things to consider is that, number one, you're kind of working in tight spaces here between your plants. So if you hit your plant, you're going to kill your plant. You're going to cut it off, or you're going to pull it up by the roots. So it's something that you want to be kind of precise with, and you don't want to just go in there willy-nilly and destroy half of your crop. The other thing is that, like I mentioned, you're really just using the weight of the hoe itself, which is not very heavy. I don't know how heavy this is, maybe just a few pounds, and allowing it, the weight of the hoe, to disturb that soil, just the very surface of that soil just a little bit. There is temptation to want to really dig down in there and to dig into the ground and really get down in there where the roots are. However, if you're trying to do more of like a no-till type practice, then you really don't want to do that, because if you're no-till, then what you're trying to do is disturb the soil as little as possible, right? Because you're trying to maintain all that natural bacteria and the microbes and whatnot in your soil. And if you start really digging down in there with your hoe, you're just gonna destroy that. So you don't want to do that. So it's actually really not a labor intensive process. It's pretty simple. I've actually already done 3 of these beds, and it's been really simple. So I'm going to go ahead and finish out these, and then I'll show you guys what else we have going in the flower garden itself. That bed took me, gosh, by the time I got the netting lifted and put back down, took me maybe 5 minutes to do. I don't even know if it took me 5 minutes, honestly. I do not have 100% of the weed issue controlled now. Weeds will still continue to come up. But like I said, if I can be consistent doing this maybe once a week or so, I'm really going to cut down on the weed pressure, and it'll just continue to get better and better over time. And you may have noticed in that time lapse that I was bending down and hand picking some weeds. And the ones that I was picking there is the Bermuda grass, because we do have quite a bit of Bermuda grass growing in through here, which is just a really hard weed, or grass, I guess I should say, to get a hold of, and it's deeply rooted. So I do, if I see it, I do try to get down in there and actually hand pull that the best I can. But I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of these beds knocked out, and then I'll show you guys what we got going in the rest of the flower beds. Everything is officially weeded, or maybe I should say cultivated. It's not 100%, still have some weeds, because I had, like I said, I had let it get pretty out of control. But also, like I said, if I'll continue to come out here and do this on a regular basis and just be very consistent, very, very diligent with it, then I will get the weed issue under control. And quite honestly, this is the best these beds have ever looked in terms of weeds. So just got to stay on top of it, and we'll get there. It'll just take some time. I was going to take you through these rows and kind of show you what we've got going. Again, I'm not a flower farmer. This whole flower situation I've got going here is really just for fun. I have been selling a few wholesale, and I'll talk about that a little bit. But really, where my interest lies, and probably why the weed situation got so out of control over here, is because my time and attention really hangs out at that tunnel where the food is. But these bachelor buttons for sure are a regrow next year. They were super easy. I overwintered these guys. I planted them last fall. Literally just threw some seeds in the ground. Wasn't even very, particular with spacing or anything. Just kind of tossed some seeds in the ground. And these guys overwintered wonderfully. There were most nights, honestly, I didn't even cover them when it got below freezing, and they just were really hardy, and they have been just pumping out the blooms. I have harvested these multiple times, and honestly, just this small patch I can't even stay on top of. I mean, they just constantly bloom. And so I have sold several bunches of these wholesale, and I've got to harvest some more later this week, because I've got some more I need to sell. They want more. So yeah, these were wonderful. The other half of the bed here was where I had the ranunculus that were a total failure. The anemones were kind of in that pile of old weeds right there. And I just pulled them up because they were past their prime. What you doing?
Got all your lights fixed. Now I'm taking this cord that was draped, because this is the only one without two. And I'm just syncing these lights up so it looks like you got 2 lights running everywhere.
Oh, okay, cool.
Is that okay?
Yeah. So these are the lights for Girls Night Out. We lit them up the other night when it was dark, and it looked so cool. Zinnias, I've grown zinnias for many a year. If you are wanting to kind of get into flowers and want a super simple flower to grow zinnia, because I mean, they're just foolproof. They'll do wonderfully. And these guys, most of these guys have already been pinched. So you can see here, I do pinch my zinnias. So I usually give myself a couple sets of true leaves, and then right above that, I'll go ahead and snip that or pinch it. And all that does will signal this flower to send off more shoots. It'll make it a stronger flower, and it will send off more blooms. So all this row down here is zinnias. And then at the very end, I'll take you down there. Oh, no, I've got more. So at the very end is straw flower. First year I've done that, and I have had the hardest time with it. Had a really hard time getting it to germinate. I started it indoors, and it did not germinate well at all. So I started another round of them, and they germinated a little better, but not great. And then they've just been really slow to grow. I don't know if they'll just wind up petering out or if they will continue to grow, but they've been kind of difficult for me. And then over here is Celosia, a couple different varieties. Same situation with these guys. I've heard they're really easy to grow, so I'm not sure what I've done wrong, but I had a really hard time getting them to germinate, and then they've just been really slow to grow ever since then. So really small patch of Celosia, really small patch of straw flower, so I'm just kind of playing around with that. And then most of this bed over here is empty, except for this down here. When I say zinnias is super easy to grow, I mean it is super easy to grow, and it will self-seed. These are all little zinnias that actually sprouted up over there. They self-seeded from last year. And so I just plucked them out of the ground and threw them in the ground here. I usually do that pretty much every year because it's fun to see what kind of flower it will produce, because it's been cross-pollinated I don't know how many times, so there's no telling what these flowers are going to look like. So that's always kind of fun to me. So little patch of self-seeded zinnias that I retransplanted over here. So all this down through here is just dill. It's bouquet dill, so you can use it as kind of a filler. Just add some greenery to your bouquet. But it's starting to come on. It took a minute. When I transplanted it, it struggled a little bit, but it's starting to come on now, and putting off new growth here. So they'll come on. All these guys here, this is all garlic I planted last year. I'll be ready to harvest probably in a couple months or so. And then over here, I just popped these suckers in the ground. You see those little sprouts down there? That's all Malabar spinach. And so what I'm going to do with that is, so Malabar spinach, it is edible. I'm not going to eat it though. I don't necessarily like the taste of it. So this is going to trellis here because it climbs. And last year was the first year I had the opportunity to harvest it. I actually harvested it from Jill's house. And I put it in bouquets because it had a really long vase life, and it was very pretty. It was just really pretty. It was like this long viney foliage. It had little berries on it. Super long vase life. It was just really cool. So I'm going to grow my own this year. So I've got 2 patches of dahlias, one down here and then one way on the other side of that cosmos over there. And that was unintentional. So I originally was going to transplant all of my dahlias in here. And I thought I did that. So I planted my dahlias, planted my cosmos, and then I realized that I had more dahlia tubers. So I went ahead and just plugged those in the ground here, and they've all come up nicely. A lot of these guys were actually pre-sprouted. I pre-sprouted them several months prior and just kept them in the house. But ever since I've transplanted them in the ground, they've really put on some more new growth, and they're starting to come on. So last year was the first year that I ever attempted to grow dahlias. I didn't get just a ton of blooms, honestly. Through the hot part of the summer, they really struggled. They did not like that much heat. I really struggled with the pests too. And then as fall came on, it was when they really started to thrive, and I was able to get a few more blooms. And then that first frost took them out. So I didn't feel like the season was that long. So this year, what I'm going to try to do, this may or may not work. I don't know. I've not ever heard of anybody doing this, so I don't know. But I've planted all my dahlias same time that I planted them last year. I assume that they're really going to struggle with the heat as the heat starts to come on. So now that I've got these hoops, it's like essentially these low tunnels here, what I'll do is probably play around with throwing some shade cloth on the top of them and just seeing if that helps them to thrive a little more in the hotter parts of the summer. I'm also going to put, a lot of times you'll see, or I've seen on Instagram and whatnot, these flower farmers will put mesh bags over the buds of their flowers to keep pests away. It's probably what I'll try to do this year, because I really did have a hard time with pests eating the petals of the flowers, which was really frustrating. You know, you finally get that flower, you work really hard to get it, it's been hot, they've not been thriving, and then all of a sudden you have this really pretty flower coming on, and it takes, you know, one day for a pest to come in and just demolish it. So I'll probably do that as well. I've got more dahlias this year. I did save some tubers from last year. Some I did not do well with splitting, others I did well. I think that's just one of those things that it's a skill that it kind of takes time to learn. But splitting dahlia tubers was definitely difficult for me, so I'll continue to practice with that. But some were saved from last year. Some were just bags that I bought from Walmart and Lowe's, and then I did buy maybe just one specialty tuber from a flower farmer on Instagram. So I'm excited to see them come on this year. And then lastly, on this very last row, this is all cosmos coming down here. This is not my first year. Here's some of those zinnias that self-seeded. So those are really hard for me to pull up and throw away, so I'll probably just leave them there for now. Not my first year to grow cosmos. Another really easy flower to grow. Basically, if it's a flower that I can grow, anybody can grow it, because I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to flowers. But all these cosmos look really good. I did go ahead and pinch all of these guys as well. These guys were actually pinched before I ever transplanted them into the ground. So I started these as seeds inside, transplanted them out here. They do really well just direct seeding as well. That's how I've always done it in the past. Actually, this is the first year I've done them as a transplant. But you can definitely just throw the seeds in the ground. But I wanted to try to get kind of a jump start and see if I could get earlier blooms. And so far, it seems to be working. I need to come and deadhead these guys and start to get longer stem lengths and see if I can sell them as well. But I've got, let's see, both of these varieties are from Johnny's, and one is called a cupcake Cosmo, and that's this guy here. See how pretty it is? It's awesome. And then the other one, I don't actually remember what it's called, but it came from Johnny's as well. But it's sort of like a double, there he is down here, kind of a double petal variety. Super pretty. Just a fun filler flower. But they're really starting to come on here. See that guy there? A little bug needs to go away. And then down here are the rest of those dahlias. They're a little bit further along than the ones in the other bed. Oh, and then over here, I forgot about these guys. This is just a really small section of sunflowers. They're all the Pro Cut variety, various colors. So we're just playing around with those too. I got to stop playing in the flowers and I got to get to work, because our girls' night out is just like 3 or 4 days away now. There's still some work to be done. I'm starting to feel a little less stressed about it. I felt like there was a lot of work to be done a few days ago, and we've really knocked a lot of those things off of our to-do list. So I'm feeling a little better, but there is still some work to be done. And right now Tyler's doing all of it, so I probably should start to help him. But thank you for walking through the flower garden with me. If you have any flower gardening tips or tricks for me, I'm all ears, because like I said, this is all just experimental. It's just for fun. So teach me what you know. I'm going to get back to work, and then I guess the next time I'll see you, it will be an update on our Girls' Night Out farm event. I'll let you know how it went, and give you any tips and tricks that I learned along the way in case you want to do your own farm event. And I'll see y'all next week. Bye.